Hello and welcome back to another edition of Chill with Kaiju Kim. I'm Kaiju Kim. Hope you're all doing well on this lovely afternoon, evening, whatever time it is for you. I really don't like to start off on a sad note, but I feel like I can't move forward with the show until I acknowledge this. Last night, we unfortunately lost a valuable member of the Godzilla community. His name was Miguel Barroso, and if you're on Twitter, you may know him by his handle, which is Godzilla Says. No cause of death has been revealed at this point, but according to what his wife posted on Facebook, it was a very sudden death. It's very unexpected. Miguel was a huge supporter of this show and this channel and of all the kaiju community. He was amazing. He had a heart of gold, and he did everything in his power to make Godzilla Twitter a better place. He has appeared a couple times on this show before, and during his first appearance, he said that his main reason for starting that Twitter account was to make people laugh. And I think it's safe to say that he succeeded. He brought a lot of joy to the community, and it absolutely breaks my heart that he's gone. So if you'll bear with me, I would like to have a moment of silence for Miguel. Then after that, we can move forward with the show, because I feel like that's what he would want. You know, I feel like he would want us to keep having a good time. And that's exactly what we're going to do. But first, let's just take a moment to remember Miguel and everything he's done for this community. Thank you, guys. He will be missed, but like I said, he would want us to keep having a good time. So, in honor of that, let's get on with the show, shall we? So, tonight's guest wrote the comic book Primal Warrior Draco Azul, which is available on Amazon. If you can follow the link down below in the description if you want to check it out. And he recently returned from 6 years, I think, in Japan, which is 6 years longer than I've been in that country. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Kaiju Noir.
Hello, people of the internet. It is great to finally be here tonight, or today, whatever time it is when you're watching this video.
Indeed. So how are you? How's it feel to be back in the States?
It feels fantastic, Kim. When you've lived in Japan for, I guess, for as long as I have, that feeling of isolation definitely grows over time when you are in a location where you are unable to communicate with anyone, or there's always some sort of like language barrier or cultural barrier. And so like being here, it's like all the things that I took for granted, I can now enjoy to the utmost fullest degree. And it's sort of like, I feel like it's a feeling that's never going to wear off over time. It's like every day that I'm back home, I'm able to treasure everything as each day passes. Just like being able to just like strike up a conversation with any random person off the street is like it's a little thing that you never think about when you're living in your own hometown or home country. But like when you've been away for over half a decade, it's like you really cherish those moments when you're able to just instantly relate to someone on any, whether it's like a small thing or a big thing. Communication is such a vital part of life that when you're deprived of that luxury for so long, it's like you really start to appreciate like the smaller things in a whole new way, I feel. And it's not just, talking to random people. It can also be something as simple as going to a restaurant, going to the hospital, going to like a city hall when you're dealing with legal documents, or you're dealing with medical stuff, you're dealing with just any number of little things. Living in Japan, there's always these many obstacles, because the thing about Japan is that it's not a very welcoming country for people who don't speak the language. By language, I mean Japanese. Despite the fact that Japan wants to have as many international connections as possible through the use of English, they really do not have that welcoming of a system in terms of allowing more international people to come live in Japan. It's like they go out of their way to make things as hard as possible. Like you'd expect like immigration office at least to have people who speak English to deal with international people coming to live here, but they don't. You really need a Japanese person or a Japanese speaking person with you at all times in order to deal with immigration. That's just like one part. Even when I was like coming to visit my family in Christmas, and I came back to Japan. I came back to Japan, and we had to do the mandatory 2 weeks of quarantine at a government-sponsored hotel. Not a single person spoke fluent English, despite that these were people stationed at an international airport dealing with international arrivals. And even like when they gave us English documents for our 2-week stay at a hotel, the English is all broken. So like they didn't even bother to check these official government documents to give to English speaking international arrivals. Laura, I just want to bring up Laura's comment here. He really missed the loud mariachi music outside here too. Yes, I did. Yes, I absolutely do. I miss the Mexican side of my cultural heritage so much. But yeah, I guess because I was already on this tangent, sorry about that. But yeah, I did want to mention that as much as I love, living in Japan, there's definitely a side of it to living in Japan that cannot be ignored, that most people aren't aware about. And it's not that I hated my time in Japan, not at all. I'm just saying that, like, for every good thing that I enjoyed about Japan, there's always some negative side of Japan. And that's the side that most people are just simply not aware of. So those are the things I really want to, I'm really excited to bring up to help people understand the ins and outs of being an international resident of the country.
Yeah, and we'll definitely touch on those things a little bit later in the show. But first, let's see who we have in the chat tonight.
Of course.
All right, let's see. We got Valerie. What's going on, Valerie? How's it going? We got Davis, Titan Goji. What's up, good? What's up? What's going on? What's going on? Go Jillian 91. Hello, hello. Matt from Monstrosities. I smelled the aroma of chill.
Well, I don't understand what you can possibly mean about shill. Where did that? I don't know what you mean by shilling.
What do you mean?
What do you mean, Matt?
What do you mean,
I have no idea what you're talking about.
You're full of crap.
Nick here.
Hey, how's it going, Nick? And we got Michael Hamilton in the house. What's going on? Enjoying Kim's first episode back from getting hitched the only appropriate way, with a steak and a glass of red wine. I don't think I had steak at my wedding. I had chicken and White Castles after the reception. So I guess, there's beef involved. All right, we already said hello to Miss Laura Fitkin. Hello, hello. And we have Stephen Walker. Yeah, Stephen, there you go. Well, you know what they say about swings and roundabouts. And B. Tore in Goji and Kasaibo F29. Hello, hello.
I love Titan Goji's Davis's comment right before that, where it's a JoJo reference. Yes, as soon as God, you don't understand how difficult it was to like ship all my stuff overseas to America. The post office was just giving me one headache after another, after another, after another. Yeah, by the time I was done with Japan, that's pretty much how I felt.
Oh no.
I'll never forgive the Japanese.
Oh my.
God,
Well
yeah.
then. Alrighty, Andres. Before we continue our conversation, I have to ask you my 3 questions.
Yes.
Yes.
It
How
wouldn't
did
be
you
a
get into
title.
Godzilla? What
Yeah.
is your favorite Godzilla film? And what is your favorite non-Godzilla kaiju film?
Okay, then. So, how did I got into Godzilla? So, much like a lot of people who got into Godzilla, I was a huge fan of dinosaurs growing up. You know, grew up in the 90s, so that was like a perfect time for all kinds of dino media, whether it was like Walking with Dinosaurs or Extreme Dinosaurs or Power Rangers or, of course, Jurassic Park. And that love of dinosaurs eventually kind of like I want to just like take in as much dino media as possible, and that eventually led to my parents picking up 2 VHS copies. I can't remember if it was like from Target or Toys R Us or some store, and it was a VHS copy of Godzilla versus the Sea Monster and Godzilla versus Mecha Godzilla, and I believe Sea Monster was the one that I saw first, and it completely blew my mind because I'd never seen anything like that before. And it was crazy. It was awesome. It was imaginative. It was colorful. It was bombastic. It was the coolest thing I've ever seen. And from that point, I was like, oh, I want more of this. And thankfully, my parents helped me go out of. We went out of our way to get any Godzilla VHS tape that we could get our hands on at the time. And eventually, by the time I was in junior high or high school, I discovered Toho Kingdom. It like using the internet more opened my eyes to more Japanese monster media, and eventually, it made me kind of turn into like a bit of an obsession and slash hobby. And at that point, it turned me into the kaiju fan that I am today. As for my favorite Godzilla movie, that would easily be Ghidorah the Three-Headed Monster, mostly because it's a very interesting blending of genres. You got these sort of like James Bond-esque international action thriller spy angle with the missing princess. You got the international terrorists and the whole assassination deal, and you got the other side, which is like a almost like apocalyptic alien invasion Japanese monster mash, and it's kind of like my go-to example for how to do a proper blending of 2 very different genres together. Whereas a movie like Dogora the Space Monster, the one with the big jellyfish, space jellyfish, that's an example of how not to do a crime thriller giant monster mashup where the 2 plots have nothing to do with each other. But with Ghidorah the Three-Headed Monster, I really enjoyed how the movie was paced, how it was written, how the human scenes were, for me personally, just as engaging as the monster scenes. And I've never seen another Godzilla movie attempt to do the things that movie did. And of course, there's the whole deal with Ghidorah, how wonderful he was built up as this massive threat, and how this was the movie that shifted our perspective of Godzilla, how we were allowed to root for him without feeling guilty afterwards because he's like, the bad guy in the previous films.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and again, it's also got a lot of intense drama. It's got a lot of campy moments. It's got everything you could ever ask for in a Godzilla movie. So that's why it's always been my all-time favorite. And finally, as for my favorite non-Godzilla kaiju movie, it would easily be Frankenstein versus Baragon, aka Frankenstein Conquers the World. I love how that movie is paced. I love again, another interesting blending of genres. You got the whole classic Universal monster movie, with a sympathetic creature like Frankenstein. You got the giant monster angle with Baragon. You incorporating elements of World War II history into the storyline, I thought was very fascinating. And yeah, you got Nick Adams, of course, who is always entertaining to see on screen. And I love the execution of the various effects. Again, it kind of like represents everything that I love from the genre without Godzilla. Just the being able to just take some interesting angle and make a very imaginative, ambitious, and wonderfully campy, yet also horrifyingly entertaining piece of media, and just gonna go for broke. It's like, we don't care if this may look too silly or too whatever. It's like, this is the story we want to tell, and this is how we're going to do it. And I have nothing but respect for people who just kind of go all out like that, without a care for what anyone else would think, I'd say.
Awesome. Those are splendid answers. Splendid indeed.
Thank you.
Alrighty, so let's talk about comic books. More specifically, your comic book, Primal Warrior Draco Azul. So how did that all get started? How did you get into making comic books? Tell us the beginning.
Yeah, sure. So I guess when it comes to the character of Draco Azul, it all started at, I want to say, the beginning of 2014, where I debuted Draco Azul as the mascot for my YouTube channel, Kaiju Noir. And this was a creation that was inspired by two elements, one being Pacific Rim, the 2013 giant monster, giant robot Guillermo del Toro film, and the other being another indie giant robot comic, Robot God Akamatsu. And it was these two pieces of media, because like for me, I grew up a lot on giant robot stuff like Power Rangers or Mobile Suit Gundam. And it eventually, like, seeing these two recent pieces of media, one on the indie side, one on the big budget side, I was like, wow, if these people can make robots on like various scales, I want to have a robot of myself. And thanks to my friend Dylan McCandless, we collaborated and created this robot design. And eventually, I believe it was 2014 was the same year I attended my very first G-Fest. And it was there that I got to meet the author of Robot God Akamatsu, James Biggie, who is also he's both a graphic designer as well as an artist who has done cover work for a lot of IDW series like Transformers, Godzilla, and Judge Dredd and G.I. Joe. And so I became friends with him. And it was through him that I became friends with a lot of other people in the Artist Alley community. And I've noticed that so many of these people were making their own original creations inspired by the things that they loved, whether it was Robot God Akamatsu, Tyler Soule's Durantis, the Lost Serpent, Christopher Martinez's Fire Beast Dorugan, or Keith Foster's Kodoja. And so I was like, wow, these guys, if these guys can do it, like maybe I can potentially do something like that. And one day, my friend Chris Martinez, he asked me, hey, you have a really cool character. Do you plan to do anything with him? I was like, well, I've been putting together a story in my head. I haven't really written anything down. And he was encouraging me to go ahead and make that, to make the effort to do that. And I was like, oh, can I do it? Because as someone who has ambitions of being a film critic, I always saw myself as someone who analyzes stories, not so much someone who creates stories, because those are two completely different skill sets. And he encouraged me. He and his editor and friend, Jonathan Claude, showed me the ropes of what it takes to script a comic book and everything that goes into making a comic book. And eventually through them, I was able to get in contact with Tyler Soules, who became my artist, Ed Peary, who became my colorist, and April Brown, she was my letterer, and finally Jeff Zornow, who was my cover artist. It was through these connections, through my G-Fest Artist Alley friends, that I was able to get the proper team together, and I couldn't be, more grateful for that. And, it was one of those things where it's like, I'm definitely going to make this at a loss. I'm not going to make any money off of this, but it's just something I want to put out there just for it to be something to be proud of and to say, I made this happen and I made this for the sake of wanting to making art for the sake of art. I remember it was actually something that Chris Martinez told me, who at this point I consider him a mentor to me. He told me there is no money in comics. If you're going to make something, make it because you want to be proud that you made something. And that's always been the sort of mentality I carry whenever I go into a creative endeavor, be it a comic or a novel or anything like, or an action figure, anything like that. So it was this. So eventually 2019 came around and I finally finished the first issue of Draco Azul and it sold out at G-Fest. I sold all 50 copies of that original run. And it was such a, almost like a validating moment for me where it's like, oh, okay, so people are, not only are people interested, but there's definitely like an audience there for people who are willing to purchase it, who enjoy it and support it and all that stuff. So going forward, I want to, try out more things. And I guess that's always been that's the thing I take away from this whole experience, where it's like, I've noticed that in my life, there's always those people who want to do certain things, but they're always too nervous about taking that blind leap of faith, to take the risk. And for me, it's like, if you really want to enjoy life to the fullest, you have to take those risks in life. But at the same time, you also have to be smart about what kinds of risks to take, because you don't want to go in completely blind and end up losing everything in the process. So like I mentioned, I make these comics at a financial loss, but it's like, I know I'm going to go at a loss, but I need to know that I can afford to make that loss, that this is something that's not going to bankrupt me in the long run. So yeah, and this is always something that I try to this sort of wisdom that I try to pass on to my friends, to my students, to be like, don't hesitate, don't ever live life thinking, what if you want to do something, go out and do it, but also be smart about it.
Yeah, that's good advice for any field of work, really.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely, and especially for for people who want to be in the creative field, especially like living in Japan. I've noticed that, ironically, despite it being a country where so many wonderful creations have come about from creative people, it's a country that tends to look down on the creative types, and it's in like. Most people tend to scoff at anyone who wants to become an artist or a storyteller or a filmmaker or whatever. It's like, no, you gotta work really hard so you can go to college, and so that you can join a company and you can get an office job and become a boring businessman.
Not everyone wants an office job, though.
But that's what they do in Japan. Pretty much like 90% of everyone is kind of like pressured. Like all of society pressures them into becoming those boring business office job working businessmen and women.
Doesn't sound like it's much different from America.
Yeah, that's definitely the thing. A lot of things, a lot of like social issues in America do exist in Japan, but I would say that because Japan is such an isolated country, it's a very condensed country, and it's a culture where everyone falls in line. Everyone kind of acts the same, is expected to act the same, behave the same, do the same, talk the same. I would say those social issues in America are like kind of like increased tenfold in Japan. In fact, in Japan, they have a proverb that I believe explains their society so well, and that is, the nail that sticks out must be hammered back down. So
yeah, that's
I feel like,
definitely a thing.
yeah, and I feel like, if there's ever if there's ever a saying that perfectly describes Japan, it's that, where everyone has to fall in line, and follow the crowd and do what everyone else does. So learning all of that in my time living in Japan, that's given me a lot more respect for the creative types whose work I've come to love over the years from Japan. It's like, wow, these guys had to like ignore a whole lot of societal pressures just to do what they want to do and just follow their dreams and passions, to heck with the consequences, just go forth and doing something like that.
Yeah, that is pretty inspiring, actually. Just ignore what everyone else is saying. Ignore the naysayers.
Yeah, and that's another thing. It's like with I feel like in terms of like comparing and contrasting America and Japan, with Americans, I like to think that we kind of almost pride ourselves on not caring what anyone says about us. Whereas in Japan, they care immensely what everyone around them thinks about them, and they're always like self-conscious as to how they are perceived by their peers at any given moment.
Mm, yeah, that's there's a lot to unpack there, but I don't want to I want to turn this into a political show. Ooh, okay.
Yeah, that's perfectly understandable. And again, like I said, I always enjoy talking about this subject because again, this is a side of Japan that most people don't really know about. And I feel like most of our knowledge of Japan generally comes from the media that we consume that depicts a version of Japan. But having lived in Japan, I want to say that the version you see on film or in animation or on the comic pages, that's not a depiction of real Japan, but rather it depicts a version of Japan that the creators wished their country was like. Um, so it's like, yeah, it's more like an idealized, fantasized version of Japan. Um, based on what they wish that their country was like, where people are allowed to be more expressive, to be more honest about themselves, be true to themselves, that sort of thing. And I feel like that's definitely like a distinction that a lot of foreigners need to understand, that yeah, they need to separate fiction from reality.
Yeah, yeah. It's not just in the sense of like Americans going to Japan, then separating fiction from reality. That's a thing that everyone has a problem with. I have a problem with it sometimes.
Just curious,
Yeah,
have you been traveled to Japan before?
I have not,
Okay, then.
unfortunately.
Uh,
I want to go so bad. I'm jealous of everybody who goes to Japan. I feel like everyone's been to Japan but me.
let's see. I know. I think I only know Matt and Paige have been to Japan.
Yeah.
Norman lives in Japan. Other than that, I don't. Who else do we know has been to Japan?
Uh, my husband's been to Japan.
Oh, nice. Okay. And I guess to answer Nick's question, who has a stronger blast, Draco's Striker or Barugan's Rainbow Beam? Let's go with Barugan's Rainbow Beam because who couldn't resist tasting the rainbow?
Yeah, dude. Even Laura agrees. Obviously.
Exactly.
And Valerie agrees too.
Rainbow Beam.
Draco Azul versus Baragon. Make it happen.
I mean, hey, anyone who wants to commission someone to draw that, you got my approval.
Yeah.
Oh,
Alyssa, go. Of course, Alyssa.
Yes, so yeah, she's another person there. Yeah, she's also someone who's going to be coming to G Fest. So that's another person we get to meet in person. You get to meet in person for the first time.
Yay, I can't wait to meet her. She's so sweet. Alrighty, let's see. Let me just pull up my questions here. All right, now. So, what did your creative process look like when you were working on Draco Azul?
Okay, so before I even got started on making the comics, I ended up writing an outline of what occurs from beginning to end, and sort of like mark down all the important beats for the story. And when it came to the first story, I wanted to sort of give you give the audience or the reader a sort of day in the life approach. So it's like, here's the character, here's where he's at, this is what he does on a regular basis. This is just to establish the status quo. And I sort of like approach the first comic like I would with like, say, an animated, like a pilot to a TV show, where it's just here to establish all the major elements of the story. And after that, it's like, okay, now that I established the status quo, now let's focus on the thing that sort of changes said status quo. So when it came to issue 2 of Draco Azul, that's when I introduced the character of Ramona. That's where I introduced the sort of internal struggle that the main protagonist, Eric Martinez, goes through along his journey of fighting these giant monsters on a regular basis, and the psychological toll it has taken on his mind. And at that point, going from issue 2 to issue 3, it's like, okay, now that we've established all of this parts, let's go back to the beginning and look at how everything got started. Originally, I was going to put the origin of Draco Azul and Eric Martinez in issue 1, but it was mainly going to be like a very small part of the story because my focus was on the here and now. Just want to, get right into the action to grab people's attention. But my editor, Jonathan, he told me, hey, if you think that this has the potential to be its own story, why not save it for later? And I thought, oh, you know what? That's right. I've seen many storytellers. They tend to leave things a little kind of like more mysterious or ambiguous, and then get back to the origin after you've kind of hyped it up enough by then. So issue 3 was one big origin story. And then for going forward from issue 4 onward, that's going to be like, okay, now we're ready to introduce the main antagonist to see who is the character who's pulling the strings, the man behind the curtain, the guy pulling all the strings, the main puppeteer. And so from that point on, it's like, here's the main villain, here's his henchman, and it's almost sort of like take that. Sort of like what do you call in Japan, this genre of anime is called shonen, where it's aimed at like that young boys, teenager demographic. Dragon Ball being like a perfect example of shonen action, where you set up the main villain, you have all his henchmen, and so it's almost like going up the ranks as the hero is constantly challenged and having to prove himself and overcome each challenge until he eventually reaches the top. And it's sort of like a very basic, basic outline of sort of like that hero's journey. And so I just took that, applied it to Draco Azul. And on one hand, I have everything planned in advance, but at the same time, I'm also learning and tweaking the story as we go along, as my skills as a writer continues to improve, or at least I hope. I like to think that I am improving as I go, as I go about making each comic.
Awesome. I'm curious to know, has your experience in Japan impacted or influenced your writing in any way?
I definitely would say so, especially in the case of characters. Writing characters who do not speak English as their first language. Having taught a variety of students in Japan, I've taught elementary school children, junior high, high school, college students, young adults, middle-aged adults, elderly people, retired senior citizens. And so I've noticed, like, right away within my first year of teaching in Japan, that even though these people in Japan, it is mandatory to learn English from junior high all the way to college, much like how for us, it's mandatory for us to take a second language class. For most of us, it's more than likely Spanish or French or Japanese or whatever, or even Chinese or German, whatever. So I've noticed that throughout their entire history with English education, at no point do they discuss casual level English terms, simple proverbs or idioms, simple phrases like, oh, you hit the nail on the head there, or looks like I just hit the jackpot. Simple phrases like that we use on a regular basis, with anywhere, anytime, with anyone. all these kinds of phrases, or like killing two birds with one stone. If I were to say that phrase, you would instantly know what that is, because that's just a part of our cultural lingo. But if you say kill two birds with one stone to any one of my Japanese students, they're not going to have not going to have a clue what you're talking about. Like, what? Birds? Killing? Stone?
Why are we killing
What?
birds? That's animal cruelty.
Exactly. So this is something that I keep in mind when I'm writing a bilingual character who knows enough English to get the point across, but I'm not going to write him or her like I would a native English speaker. So when writing Ramona, who appears from issue 2 onwards, I'm always having to keep that in mind, where it's like I need to make her sound fluent in English, but not make her sound too much like a native speaker. And this also goes into my prose writing, whether I'm writing the Draco Azul novel or Draco Azul short stories, which involves a lot more dialogue in these cases. It's also something that I have to do. And even when I'm co-writing with other authors, like recently I co-wrote the 5th installment in Matthew Denian's Atomic Wreck series, and majority of the story takes place in Mexico. So it's like at certain points, my co-author would sometimes write a character. I'm thinking, oh, this sounds a little too native. This person is using phrases that your standard individual who speaks English as a second language would most likely never use, or would not be comfortable enough using. So I would go in there and tweak it a bit and make it sound like more believable. So yeah, I would say like living in Japan and teaching English to people who wish to speak it as a second language, it's definitely really opened my eyes to just how complex language in general works, and especially just how our own English language works in terms of like what most people are taught in a general sense, and then what you learn in the classroom versus what you learn from real life experiences.
Oh, that's very fascinating. You must travel to Master Roshi's place if you wish to improve, Andres.
That's very true. It makes a lot of sense.
But seriously, though, you've been doing great. Keep up the good work.
Thank you very much, Warrior King.
Awesome. So how exactly did you land a gig as an English teacher in Japan?
That's a very good question. In fact, that's a question that all my students asked me in our first meeting. So it all started in before ever thinking about moving to Japan. I had a friend of mine named Jonathan Diaz. He's been a friend of mine going all the way back to like freshman year of high school. And after high school, we both went to the same university. And our university happened to have a foreign exchange program with Gifu University. Gifu University being in Gifu City in Gifu Prefecture of Japan, which is pretty much like right there, smack dab in the middle of the countryside area, which is the middle portion of Japan. So he had a minor in Japanese, and so he applied to study Japanese for a year over at Gifu University. Eventually, he finished, he came back, he graduated a year before me, and he decided to move back to Gifu, Japan, because he wanted to learn more Japanese, and he wanted to start working there. So he went there, applied for a working visa, and he started working at an English conversation school known in Japanese as an eikaiwa. And in Japan, there are plenty of eikaiwas, which are kind of like these after-school studying programs, but only focused on English. And it's just for a variety of people, from children, teens, adults alike. And we have classes at all points of the day, from the morning, afternoon, late evening, night. We have all classes all day and various teachers to teach English. And you don't really need any sort of like a training or any. The only requirement really to work as an English teacher is you have to speak English, obviously, and you need to have a bachelor's degree of any kind, at least for people from like first world countries, like whether you're from America or Australia or the UK. If you speak English and you got a bachelor's degree of any kind, you're gold. So that's how my friend Jonathan got the job. And so I graduated in 2015. And by January 2016, he messaged me saying, "Hey, Andres, one of our teachers is planning to return back home to his home country. So we're currently looking for teachers. Would you be interested in this opportunity?" And I was like, wow, getting the chance to go there with a job already locked in for me. And I'm gonna have my boss and my friend and Jonathan they're gonna help me, get settled there. It was definitely one of those moments that I mentioned earlier, where it's like you gotta take that risk, you gotta take the leap of faith. You don't want to live life just constantly wondering what if. So it's like, yeah, let's do it. Let's see what happens. So March 2016 rolled around and I ended up moving to Gifu, Japan. And thanks to my friend Jonathan, who I'll always be grateful for to this very day. And it definitely took about a month. It took me about a month to really get acclimated to my new surroundings. And from there on, it was an incredible adventure, getting to learn the ins and outs of what it's like to live in Japan, not just Japan, but to live in the countryside of Japan, what I like to consider real Japan. Because it's like, sure, Tokyo is cool, Osaka is cool, but getting to be in the middle of like a nice, peaceful, quiet countryside town like Japan, where you're surrounded by mountains and rivers and all kinds of nature, it was such a wonderful feeling, that where every day felt like an adventure. At no point did I really miss home because I was too busy having so much fun. And but it wasn't until I want to say like 4 years in that I started to become homesick, that I started to say, okay, I think I've had enough of Japan. I've got all that I could from out of it. I think it's time to go home. And then, of course, COVID happened. So I was stuck in Japan for an extra 2 years.
Oh, no.
So by the time, 2022 rolled around, I was like, let me out, please.
Let me out. Let me out. It's like the opposite of that meme.
Yeah, let me out. Oh, I want to enjoy my tacos and burritos, por favor. Yeah, so that's pretty much how the whole experience has been.
Oh man, have you finished going through Japanese 7-Eleven withdrawal yet? I heard when you get the shakes, it is the hardest part.
Well, I can't really exactly miss Japanese 7-Eleven because I'm having too much fun enjoying American 7-Eleven.
Ah, there we go. That's the one.
That's a crazy thing. There are no slushies in Japan, like at all. They don't do slushies, not even Japanese 7-Eleven. Japanese 7-Eleven, they have a lot of wonderful and healthy food, and yet no slushies, no ice cream cookie, like we call ice cream cookie sandwiches. None of that.
There's none of that there. Does any sweet stuff, like not even like that red bean stuff?
Oh, that stuff, Anko is great. It's wonderful, but I wouldn't call it sweet. In fact, Japanese palates, they would consider our candy to be too sweet for them. I noticed that a lot of Japanese food lacks a lot of flavor. There are certain restaurants that would provide a more flavorful dishes, but for the most part, in general, a lot of Japanese food just does not have a lot of strong flavors, whether it be tangy or sour or sweet or spicy. They just don't really do a whole lot of that. The only time I've ever really tasted any sort of flavor is if I go to like an Indian curry restaurant or like a like a, what do you call it, a Chinese ramen restaurant or a South Korean noodle ramen restaurant. Those kind of places where it's like, okay, this is what I've been looking for. So as much as I enjoy Japanese food, it's definitely nowhere near my favorite kind of food. Especially coming back here and enjoying American and Mexican food again. It's like, oh God, where have you been all my life?
You should have smuggled some when you came back from.
Well, trust me, I did try.
Stuff it in your bag and just like pretend it's I need it for medicinal purposes.
Yeah, if you ever try to bring any like American or Mexican candy to Japan and show them to a Japanese person, they'll be like, "Oh my god, it's too sweet," or "Oh my god, it's too spicy."
Oh my goodness. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm not much for spicy food either, but
Uh, I will say, like, when the first time last month, I went to a American 7-Eleven. I found, what was it called? I think it was like Cinnamon Toast Crunch popcorn. I was like, "Yep, I'm back in America, all right." Or actually, like when I went to get this, this slushy over at 7-Eleven, I found Flaming Hot brand Mountain Dew. I was like,
Oh yeah,
"What?"
that's a thing now.
Yeah, I was like, "What in God's name is this? Do I want to subject myself out of morbid curiosity?"
Oh my God. I dare you to do it.
I'll get back to you on that.
I want footage. I want video evidence.
Yes. Okay then. Uh, but yeah, having been back in America and looking at convenience stores, instead of seeing a bunch of healthy choices, I just see nothing but snacks and junk food galore. Seeing like an entire their selection of energy drinks at any convenience store would be like maybe 2 small rows and that's it. Whereas like at an American convenience store, it's like just an entire row, an entire door full of energy drinks with all kinds of brands.
Yep. What is it true they don't have Pop-Tarts
They
there?
don't have Pop-Tarts. In fact, I have to
No.
thank Laura and Nick for giving me an emergency supply of Pop-Tarts.
Oh, God bless you, Laura and Nick.
Yes, they are saints. It's like they sent in like this, what do you call it, like a rescue care package, a little parachute.
The America Care package.
Yeah, and you can almost hear
with all the sugary treats you can eat.
and if you listen closely, you can almost hear the cry of an eagle.
What else would be an American Care package? Fried chicken, maybe.
Oh yeah, yeah. Beef
Deep
jerky.
fried Oreos, yeah.
Oh, deep fried Oreos. Oh god, I can't wait to imagine to head to like a county fair again. Yeah, that was the thing. I loved explaining county fair food to my students. Because they have like food stands at certain festivals, but none of it is ever as crazy as the kind of like any of the deep fried stuff, whether they be like chocolate covered bacon or like fried Oreos, fried Kool-Aid, a lot of crazy stuff you can find on YouTube at least.
Listen, I like chocolate. I like bacon. I don't know if I'd eat chocolate covered bacon.
I'll do you one better. How about chocolate covered pickles?
Oh dear God, no. Again, I like pickles. I like chocolate, but don't put them together.
Only in America.
America.
Oh God, Laura just brought a deep fried butter on a stick.
Oh my God, why is that a thing?
Because America.
America.
It's just Merka. Merka.
America. Not America, America.
Merka. I even taught that joke to my students.
Look, even Kasaibo's. I agree. Oh my goodness. Chocolate covered potato chips are good. I might eat that because I've eaten chocolate covered pretzels and I like those. So maybe I'll try a chocolate covered potato chip.
Interesting. Okay.
Merca.
Merca, yes.
You gotta do it with the fist. Merca.
Merca. I guess was it Bitoren in Goji brought a black tea or green tea. I'm more of a fan of barley tea, having lived in Japan for as long as I have. That's kind of become my go-to drink. But in terms of like the Japanese lifestyle, it's very interesting how like with American restaurants, the free drink that they'll always give you is water. But for a lot of restaurants in Japan, it's always green tea. In fact, if it's like the summertime, they'll give you green tea with ice, like ice cold green tea. But if it's during the winter, they'll give you like hot, like hot boiled green tea. So they're always like making something that's most convenient during like whatever the weather condition is like over there.
Interesting. What's your take on matcha?
Matcha. So they definitely have a lot of matcha flavored everything there. And I guess for me, I'm kind of picky. I'm more selective on like what kind of thing it's being applied to. If it's like matcha chocolate, then it's like, yeah, okay, I can go for that.
I'm sorry, there's matcha chocolate.
Oh yeah. There's like there's like matcha flavored chocolates, like there's matcha flavored sweets everywhere, and it's pretty good, I'd say. They do make a lot of they have this strange obsession with Kit Kat chocolates. It's weird because there's like barely any Snickers, there's no Milky Way, no M&Ms, no Skittles, no chocolates other than maybe Milky Way, their own chocolate called Black Thunder, which is really good, and then there's Kit Kat, and they got like a ton of different flavors of Kit Kat you cannot get here in America. And from what I've been told, the reason why Japan has so many flavors of Kit Kat is not so much for the local like residents, but it's actually for the international crowd. So I think they do that so as a means of sort of like enticing people to come in and try all these different flavors of Kit Kat, whether it's matcha Kit Kat, strawberry Kit Kat, white chocolate Kit Kat, apple pie Kit Kat, all kinds of Kit Kat flavors. Although for some reason, despite the fact that every Japanese person knows Kit Kats, they don't know the jingle, the Kit Kat jingle. Break me off a piece of that Kit Kat bar. They don't know that. I was like, how could the Kit Kat company bring this stuff over, but not the jingle?
They've been robbed.
It's almost like I become like a cultural ambassador, not just for like American culture, but also like Mexican culture as well. I gotta open these people's eyes to what like real American and Mexicano culture is.
America. Jeff Maxfield wants to know: do you at least have Mars bars?
No Mars bars. I have not seen a single Mars bars in my 6 years in Japan.
Darn. I don't know if I'm going to be able to survive in Japan for longer than like a week. I said they don't have enough chocolate there for me.
Right. You have to get in contact with Alyssa because she lives on that Navy base, and it's like a lot of like American import food over there. So like you got to get in touch with her for her to give you the goods.
Oh, okay. I gotta. She's my dealer. All right, gotcha.
Yes, I almost had to have her as my Reese's and Mike and Ike's dealer.
All right. Jesse T wants to know: have you guys read Godzilla versus Power Rangers comic? And what if you have? What did you like about it?
I'll let you go first since you've made videos about them.
I have made videos about them. I just got issue 3 a few days ago. Video coming soon. And so far, so good. They don't waste any time getting to the action. And I'm very impressed. I was so happy in issue 1 when Godzilla went up against Dragonzord. My 5-year-old heart was very, very happy.
Wonderful. I haven't had the chance to read it yet, only because I don't collect comics issue by issue anymore. In the rare chance that I do buy comics, I prefer trade paperback, so I'm just going to wait for that. I did see the fight between Godzilla and Dragonzord when it was someone scanned it and put it up online on Facebook, and it did look incredible. And so, yeah, I can't wait to see what the rest of the comic is, how the rest of the comic is going to turn out.
I'm sure it's going to be awesome. That brings me to a question that I had for you. What are some of your other favorite comics that you have not written?
Yes. Okay. So a lot of my favorite comics, I do wanted to give a shout out to a lot of my friends' comics that I mentioned prior. These were the things that inspired me to make my own stuff, like the aforementioned Robot God Akamatsu, Kodoja, Durantis, Fire Beast Dorugan. Recently, my artist put out his own comic, Colossal Conqueror, which you can find practically anywhere on Tapas, on what's the other website, Webtoons, on Facebook, on Instagram, on the Colossal Conqueror website. There are a lot of places that you can find Colossal Conqueror, where it's a big giant like iguanodon kaiju with these massive spike thumbs that he's like rampaging throughout the U.S. It's really awesome. A lot of the first like a lot of the first comics, a lot of the comics that really got me into reading and collecting comics has been a lot of Frank Miller's work. Me being Kaiju Noir, I'm a fan of like noir style storytelling, and I love the neo noir takes of Frank Miller's work, like Daredevil, Dark Knight Returns, Batman Year One, Sin City, that kind of material. Let's see, I'm a big fan of Kingdom Come, the comic completely illustrated front to back by Alex Ross. Let's see, I'm a huge fan of Ultimate Spider-Man. That was kind of like the two biggest things that I grew up with Spider-Man was like the 90s animated series, the Sam Raimi movies, and Brian Michael Bendis's Ultimate Spider-Man run. And I read a lot of that growing up. Let's see. And on the Japanese side of things, I'm a huge, huge fan of Go Nagai. Go Nagai was a manga writer and artist from the 70s, and he was a huge innovator for his time, as his work kind of like reveled in a lot of violence and like kind of like shocking action-packed storytelling in a way that it riled up a lot of like parents and teachers back in the day. He was like going out of his way to be as crude and offensive as possible, and he gave no dangs whatsoever. And he wanted to make what he wanted. And that's a sort of like sticking to your guns, is that sort of ability that I definitely kind of respect. And a lot of his work, especially Mazinger Z and Devilman, those were the things that truly inspired me. And on top of Go Nagai, his mentor, he was the mentor of another manga writer, Ken Ishikawa, who I think is criminally underrated in terms of like mainstream manga writers. Ken Ishikawa, he created another giant robot series called Getter Robo, the very first combining robot. In fact, without Getter Robo, you would not have stuff like the Megazord or Voltron. And that's all to his credit. And he was this fantastic creator and storyteller. He kind of turned Getter Robo from this sort of like standard giant robot monster of the week story, and then as the series progressed, he turned it into this sort of like almost dark, apocalyptic, like almost like Lovecraftian sci-fi saga. And a lot of those themes also permeate throughout a lot of his own work. So I would say Ishikawa, Go Nagai were my biggest inspirations in terms of like the look, the style, the feel, and the approach to storytelling with Primal Warrior Draco Azul.
Fascinating. So if you were given the task to rewrite any comic, any ever, what would it be and why?
That is a very good question there. I would certainly love to try my hand at a Getter Robo story of my own, especially since I have seen other people. In the past, there have been other people who have done their takes on Getter Robo. In fact, for anyone who is familiar with the ongoing Ultraman manga, where it's sort of like a kid in an Iron Man-esque armored suit, those writers, that duo, did their own Getter Robo stuff that is available in English called Getter Robo Devolution. So I would like to try my hand at that franchise. Other than that, any other specific comic that I would love to do? Let's see. That's a very difficult question to think about, because for me, I'm not so much interested in working on other people's creations. I would rather prefer to work on my own stuff that came from me, where I would have like complete 100% control over that creation. I've just never really been a fan of that kind of just working on other people's stuff, or even in stuff like, say, like fan films or fan fiction. A lot of stuff never really interested me all that much. And I understand, not to say that, that stuff is bad, not at all. I know there's definitely a place for fan works. But for me, I've always encouraged people to embrace more original ideas, to create their own stories, to be proud of the fact that you said, hey, I made this. This is all from me. This is mine to own and do with as I please. So yeah, I've never really thought about what, like sometimes during my time on YouTube, people would ask me, "Hey, if you were to direct a Godzilla story or Godzilla movie, what would it be?" And be like, "I don't know. I never thought about making a Godzilla story because I'd rather make my own giant monster story, which
Fair
I
enough.
have technically now."
Oh yeah, you have. There you go.
But yeah, if there's any other, oh, okay, if there's one thing I would definitely love to write, comic I would love to write, it's Shogun Warriors. Shogun Warriors was a toy line from Mattel from the 70s where they imported a bunch of Japanese giant robot manga anime toys to America, renamed them, and turned them into the Shogun Warriors toy line, which Godzilla was also part of. And eventually they did a collaboration with Marvel Comics. Marvel did a very brief run of Shogun Warrior comics where they took 3 of their robots and just made completely new stories out of them. So I would say I would love to do a version of Shogun Warriors where maybe I can do like other kind, like Shogun Warriors, the next generation. And I get to do some of the robots that were part of the toy line, but were never featured in the comic from Marvel at that time. So yeah, I would love to do that, if only so that I can show more love to the 70s era of giant robots. Because a lot of people know Transformers, a lot of people know Voltron. Some people out there might remember the GoBots, but or Power Rangers. But this is all from the 90s and 80s, and I really with Draco Azul I wanted to do like more of a throwback to the 70s era of anime and manga. So if I can do that with Shogun Warriors, I would more than gladly do so. So yeah, that would be my answer there.
Awesome. And Shema wants to know who would win, Draco Azul or Mad Mike the Pizza Monster?
Of course you would ask that, Ralph. I'll give it to Mad Mike the Pizza Monster, only because his food would just be too delicious for Draco Azul to ever overcome that.
Understandable.
Or to go with my usual to go with my alternative answer to any of these who would win scenarios. Yes, always.
That's the best answer I can give to any question. If you don't know the answer is yes.
Always.
Oh, good Lord. So, which would you say is more challenging? Teaching English to Japanese kids or writing a comic book series?
I would definitely have to say teaching when we're talking about kids, like no little kids.
Like the kids that you were teaching.
Yeah. I would definitely say teaching them is definitely a lot more difficult, only because like there are certain kids that I grew to absolutely love teaching. These are the kids that actually had a passion for learning English. These are kids who got excited whenever they got an answer right. Like with them, those were the kids I always like heavily invested in. And I always like encourage them, give them a lot of like positive reinforcements to encourage them to say, yeah, you're doing great. Keep on doing it. Go for it. But then there's always going to be those very bratty kids where it's like they don't want to be there. They're only there because their parents forced them there, and they would rather be anywhere else but there. So they're just going to give you attitude the entire time. That, or they're going to pretend to be sleepy the entire time and not even pay attention. Or yes, I remember Laura Nap Kid. There's this very spoiled kid, and he just wanted to sleep the entire time. I was like, you know what? If you don't want to learn, if you're not going to listen to me, I'm not going to bother teaching you. I'll just focus on the students who do want to teach. So I just let him nap in the corner there while doing my job. It's like, hey, I'm here to do my job, okay? If you're not willing to cooperate, neither am I.
Fair enough. Kids.
That's the thing. No matter what country they're from, kids are always going to be kids, for better or for worse.
Yeah, kids will be kids.
That's all I can say.
I love my little niece and nephew, and that's all the kids I need in my life. Oof, more power to you. You willingly taught
Yes.
children on a
Yes.
regular basis for 4 years, 6 years actually, right?
6 years, yes. There was a reason why. Like, I remember after my first year, I was like, I had talked to my boss, Mrs. Nonomura. Would it be okay if I just focused on adults from here on out and you can leave the kids to the other teachers? And she's like, okay, you're a good teacher. The adults love you. Go for it. And I still taught teens, preteens, and teens up to the very end. And again, for those kids that actually wanted to listen, that enjoyed being in my classes, it's been an absolute joy. But even to the very end, I always had at least one kid who would always give me trouble. Like, we start each class with me asking them some simple questions like, how are you? Or for some teachers, they would say, what is your name? How old are you? These simple things where it's the same answer every time. I want to challenge my students by saying, what did you do this morning? What did you study at school? Do you have homework? What kind of homework? I ask them questions where it's potentially a different answer each time. But like for this one student I had, like one of my last students before I came back to the US, I would ask him, how are you? And he'd take like 5 minutes to answer that. I'm like, I've been teaching it for like a year at that point. It's like, it's been a year and you still can't answer, how are you? It's, again, he just does not want to try because he does not want to be there. So it's always that's like the most difficult part of the job. You got to have a lot of patience to deal with kids.
Yeah, well, I would like to take this time to apologize to my teachers because I did not want to be there, especially my math teachers. For whatever reason, I just never did my homework. I don't know what it is, but
because I'm too cool for school.
Yeah.
You got your leather jacket on, your sunglasses, you got bandana on, your
Yeah.
your fingerless leather gloves. Whatever, teacher.
Whatever.
I'm too cool for the rules. They don't apply to me.
Oh dear, I was a rotten teenager. Anyway.
Hey, Valerie's got the right idea. Dropped out. She was too cool for school.
She was too cool for school. Listen, you're probably better off, Valerie, honestly. You're probably better off.
Imagine she's on her skateboard and like just riding off like Bart Simpson.
Yeah, you're probably better off. My sister is homeschooling her kids. They're yeah.
Oh boy.
They're much better off.
I wish her the best of luck.
But they're good kids, though.
I'm sure they are.
Yeah. So back to comic books for a second.
Yes.
What challenges did you come across while making Primal Warrior Draco Azul?
So when it came to Laura, I don't think Kim went to school during the 80s, Andres.
I was born in 1991, but I get the reference.
Yes.
I understand the reference.
I would say the money is definitely going to be the biggest obstacle when it comes to this sort of stuff, because unless you are the one illustrating all of this, making comics is not cheap whatsoever. That's definitely going to be a big thing there. I wish I had my phone. Yes, my phone's here with me. So it's like just going over how much it costs to make a comic. It's definitely in the ballpark of like a couple grand just to make one single comic when you're working with like people who are, or who do art as a profession. Let's see here. It is, let's see. Oh yeah. So like for my artist, Tyler, to illustrate a single page, it's $65 for inks and pencils and inks, an extra $30 to do the colors, and an extra $15 on top of that to do the lettering. So it's at the very least, like, let's see, I can't even do basic math now. At least like $110. So it's about roughly $110 per page. So yeah, like I said, it is not cheap when making comics, and so thankfully, when I was making issues 1, 2, and 3, I had a stable job where I can make enough money that allowed me to save up to have enough expendable cash to make these sort of projects. And so until I find a new job here in America, I'm going to hold off on starting work on issue 4 for obvious reasons.
That I would understand, understandably so. Yeah.
um,
Why does
the
everything have to cost money?
because artists need to be able to put food on the table. That's why.
Fair enough.
um, the other thing that's difficult would be when you're working with multiple people in a single team. So with issue 1, I had one person doing the art, one person doing the colors, and one person doing the lettering and formatting. And so having to receiving files and sending them to the next person, receiving and sending, having to like manage all these different art files was definitely pretty hectic. So like from issue 2 onwards, at that point, my artist Tyler took over as the artist, colorist, and letterer and formatter. So he pretty much did everything at that point, which made things so much easier for issues 2 and 3. So like basically he's like, okay, here's the art. What do you think? I say it's good. Go forward with the coloring. Okay, no shifting hands or what do you call it? Like no passing the full files onto anyone else. So that it definitely the process became a lot more streamlined when it was just Tyler and I at that point, including Jonathan Claude, who was still my editor for the scripts for issues 2 and 3. So I would definitely say when collaborating with other people, that's always going to be the hardest part from a financial standpoint. And you definitely also have to be very open to hearing the ideas from other people, hearing from the input of the people you're working with. So like if you say, let's say you wanted a character to look a certain way, but the artist who's drawing the character decides to draw them in a slightly different way that suits their own artistic skills, then at that point it's like, hey, they're the artist, you are not. If they say this is better, you have to compromise. When you're working with other people, compromise is especially important. Now, at certain points, if it's like your vision, you're the one, spearheading this project. Of course, your decisions, a lot of the decisions are up to you. You have to be the ones to make these decisions, saying like, this is what I want, this is what I want to get. But at certain points, you have to realize your limitations, as if you are someone like me who is a writer, not an artist. So at some point, it's best to let the artist take over and do the job that you pay them to do. And if it's like doesn't line up 100% with what you got to do, it's like, hey, either you draw the comic or let them do what they trust them, trust their skills. And it's like, hey, they're most likely, they're only out for your best interest. Let them take over. Let them have their say in it. And yeah, that's definitely been a big thing for some people. They don't want to compromise, and it's definitely it's gonna lead to a very difficult collaborative process. So I would say when you're working with other people, for their skills to make up for the lack of skills that you have, being open-minded is definitely very, very important there.
Mm-hmm. All right, we got a question from Raf. When the series is completed, will you attempt a trade paperback collection for Draco Azul, or at least kickstart one if possible?
Oh yeah, I would definitely love to do a trade paperback, since the website that I use, Comics Wellspring, that I use to print all these comics, they offer a trade paperback printing option as well. And that would certainly be a lot more convenient for me to only have to print one kind of book, is having to print like however many comics of each one, and having to make sure I have enough inventory for each individual issue. So it would definitely be easier on my end. I'm sure it'll be easier on a lot of other people's end. As for Kickstarter, I am not the kind of person who feels comfortable with crowdfunding. And again, I don't want to say anything bad for anyone who uses Kickstarter. Again, I understand that for a lot of people it's very essential. But maybe it's because of how I was raised. I don't feel comfortable asking for money without doing anything first for them. I don't like asking for free money. On top of that, I know that when it comes to Kickstarter, certain backers, Kickstarter backers, they would feel the need to have a larger say in the project that they're backing, when that really isn't the case. And also, there's also a lot of that pressure. There's a lot of people who, their eyes are all on you. And I would feel more comfortable not having to deal with any of that, not having to deal with any expectations. It's like I prefer to go at things at my own pace, on my own terms. And I'm sure if I were to do a Kickstarter, no doubt there's going to be a lot of wonderfully generous individuals who would be willing to donate their money and then take a step back and say, here's the money, do what you will with it, do what you can with it. But I know there's always going to be those certain people who like to overstep their boundaries and say, hey, I paid however much money. Where's my comic? Why isn't it finished right away? I want it now. It's like Jesus Christ. It's like
that's not how it works.
Right. But there's always going to be those kind of people online. So it's definitely it's like a whole lot of potential drama that I'd rather not deal with. And again, I'd rather if people want to give me money to make the next issue of Draco Azul, hey, just buy my comics.
There you go.
Yeah, buy my comics, buy my books, buy my prints, buy everything.
buy it all.
Buy one, buy it all.
I'll take it. I'll take 12.
Exactly. Yeah, it's like I got stuff there. If you want to buy if you want to give me money, support me. I got stuff out there already. It's like at that point I wouldn't feel bad at all. Getting your money because I already put the effort into making something worthy of your money, as opposed to getting it for free without doing anything. But again, I don't want this is not to shame anyone who uses crowdfunding at all. For those who choose to use crowdfunding for their projects, which a lot of indie comic creators do, I have nothing but respect for them. This is just simply how I wish to approach things.
Mm-hmm.
And for Laura, will there ever be a Draco Azul Raid Shadow Legends crossover to pay the bills? Draco Azul Raycon AirPods. You know what? If anyone wants to sponsor Draco Azul, I'll do it. Go over to buy Draco Azul and you'll get the code for Express Nord Surfshark VPN. put in the promo code Draco Azul.
Yeah. But what about Draco Azul the flamethrower?
Well, we'll get when the budget allows for that. We'll make it happen.
How about Draco Azul the toilet paper?
Yes, that's the ultimate goal right there.
Yes, that's the one.
I remember going to the Japanese supermarket. And I would see Gundam toilet paper and Hello Kitty toilet paper. I was like, that's the dream right there. That's the ultimate goal, to have your creation on something for people to use in the bathroom. That's what it's all about.
That's the dream. Draco Azul Morbius edition.
Yes. Draco Azul coming back into prints, only for to lose more money in the process.
Oh, dear God.
I guess to answer Laura's question, you have prints? Yes, I did sell a very limited supply of art prints at last year's G-Fest in very short little mini posters, and so I will be making more prints that I will be selling at the at conventions this year.
How about Draco Azul hot sauce?
No. I'll do you one better. It's got to be Draco Azul chamoy sauce. And you've never heard of chamoy. It's pretty much like what do you call pickled plums. It's a thing that started in China. They got this over in Japan as well. Japan has a lot of pickled plums, which they call umeboshi. And when I tried the umeboshi, I was like, this is chamoy sauce. And then I did my research. I'm like, where does chamoy come from? pickled plum juice. It is chamoy sauce. And like for pickled plums in Japan, they just eat them in like rice balls, onigiri. So whenever I tell my students that I love umeboshi, I was like, oh, we have this stuff back home in among Mexican families. And they're like, what? They're like, yeah, chamoy sauce. It's like umeboshi, but you put it over fruit. It's fruit sauce. It's fruit salad sauce. You put it over mango. You put it over oranges. You put it over watermelon. And they're like, wait, umeboshi and fruit together? It's like, yeah, that's what we do all the time.
Awesome. So what's next for you? You got any more projects on the horizon, or are you just waiting to not be broke?
I would say a little bit of both. I would say so. I've already have two projects, or several. I already got several projects in the works right now. I do for the last couple of years. I've been working on a Draco Azul resin figure, made in the style of your standard Bandai figure with limited articulation. And I'm working with the guys at Hop Toys who are producing it, and it will hopefully be ready in time, at least for G-Fest, for Heroes Con, if not a G-Fest. I'm also working with another friend of mine, Nick Huber, to create a series of Draco Azul keychain figurines, which are a little chibi version of Draco Azul, who I like to call Draquito Azul.
Draquito Azul. I like that.
Thank you. And aside from those two figure projects, I've also I mentioned before I was working on several books actually. I worked on last year. I co-wrote a Draco Azul novel with my friend Ace Maroke, which is like an action horror story, action horror side story that takes place like in between issues 2 and 3 of the comic, much like how my anthology book took place between issues 1 and 2 of the comic book series. Just as it's not essential to for the comics, but rather it's just a little side story, little supplementary extra material out there. Still waiting to hear back from the publisher that I submitted the book to, so we'll see if that will be ready or not by convention season. But the other book that I co-wrote with Matthew Denian, it will be Atomic Rex Ballad of Bravura. Bravura is my second creative project after Draco Azul. Pretty much what Draco Azul is to 70s super robot anime. Bravura is kind of like my take on like Mad Max meets Gundam, a post-apocalyptic giant robot story. And so it's a crossover. Bravura started out as, I included it as a bonus story in my Draco Azul anthology book, just as sort of like a pseudo backdoor pilot to introduce fans of Draco Azul to my second project, seeing like if people would be interested there. And so with enough of the positive feedback that I got from Bravura, I approached Matthew Denian to do a crossover between Bravura and Atomic Rex. So picture, if you will, a post-apocalyptic Godzilla versus Gundam story.
Ooh, that sounds awesome.
Yeah, and there you have Atomic Rex, Ballad of Bravura. We already finished the book. We submitted it. Take my money. We submitted the book to the same publisher, Severed Press, and hopefully that will also be ready in time by convention season. So got 2 novels in, hopefully ready for publishing, 2 figures in the works, and I believe that seems to be about it. Although I also been planning other stories with Draco Azul and Bravura. And so hopefully I got more to say down the line when the time is right.
That's awesome. I'm looking forward to that. I gotta check out some of your stuff. I gotta throw my money at you so you can
Thank you very much. Every dollar helps.
All right, I'll send you a penny. Does that help?
Every dollar, not penny.
Okay, all right. I'll send you $1 every day.
Yes. Remember, folks, every dollar helps. A single dollar can help a single page of Draco Azul come into existence. I need like a Sarah McLachlan a song in the background.
In the arms of the angel.
For every day that goes by, future Draco Azul stories are not published. To help these stories find the light of day, please donate.
For as little as $1 a day, you can make
Yes.
Draco Azul issue 4 come to be.
So yeah, like I said, I'm incredibly grateful for all the love and support and positive feedback that I've gotten since I started this creative endeavor of mine. And now that I'm back home in America, good old America, I am so excited to take this show on the road, to go to various conventions, share the what I've created out there to the public, and looking forward to whatever happens next in this crazy journey of mine. I feel like I'm only getting started when it comes to Draco Azul and other such endeavors.
That's awesome. Well, again, looking forward to what you got in store. All right, so we can wrap it up here. So I know you just spent this entire stream shilling your stuff, but why don't you go ahead and remind people where they can find you and your work?
For sure. So they can follow for all the latest news and info on Draco Azul or anything else that I'm working on. You can follow me over on Twitter at PW_Draco Azul. You can follow me on Facebook at the Primal Warrior Draco Azul Facebook page. You can follow me on Instagram and YouTube under Kaiju Noir. And as like we mentioned at the very beginning, Primal Warrior Draco Azul issues 1, 2, and 3 are all available digitally and physically over on Amazon. And as well as my anthology book, Full Metal Chronicles, also available on Amazon. And you can find me at the following conventions. I'll be at Heroes Con in Charlotte, North Carolina, on June 24th through the 26th. I'll be at G-Fest over in Chicago from July 15th to the 17th. And I'll be at All Monsters Attack over in Indianapolis from September 9th to the 11th.
Awesome. Well, I'll be at G-Fest too.
We'll all be there.
Yeah, I'm actually going to be on a panel.
Oh, nice.
YouTubers panel. So yay! I'm cool enough to be on a panel. Yay!
It is a wonderful feeling. Yeah, I'm
All right.
somebody. I did it.
I did it.
I'm doing it.
I'm doing it. You see me, Ma? I'm doing it. I made it. Thank you so much for coming on to my show. It has been an absolute pleasure. We should do this again sometime.
Absolutely, yes. If you have a topic that you want to just talk about together, just let me know and I'll be there.
Awesome. And to you watching at home, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to hang out with me and my fantastic guest. An extra special thank you to Brian Truong, Rogue Firefly, Danny Demana, and Nathan Marchand for supporting me on Patreon. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. Like this stream if you had a good time here tonight. And don't forget to come back here next Sunday, 7 p.m. Eastern Time for another edition of Chill with Kaiju Kim. Thanks for watching. See you next time.